Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Have you ever thought about what would happen if Voldemort had an heir? What if the Dark Lord and his most devoted follower Bellatrix Lestrange secretly had a child, a sorceress as ruthless and powerful as them both? In today's video, you will find out the shocking truth about Delphi, Voldemort's hidden daughter, and the last hope of the Dark Lord's legacy. Voldemort and Bellatrix were two of the most feared figures in the entire Harry Potter saga. He was the Dark Lord, a ruthless tyrant obsessed with blood purity and willing to sacrifice anyone to achieve his vision of a wizard-dominated world. She was his most loyal Death Eater, standing by him even when others abandoned him, carrying out his cruelest orders without question. But in the midst of war and chaos, they did something no one expected. They had a child. Her name was Delphi, and her existence changed everything.
How could such a union even be possible?
Bellatrix's obsession with Voldemort was no secret. For years she worshipped him, blindly following his every command. But Voldemort, a man incapable of love, never reciprocated her feelings. Born under the effects of a love potion, he lacked the ability to truly care for anyone. Yet, during the final years of the war, Voldemort realized one thing: his bloodline, one that traced back to Salazar Slytherin himself, would end with him. And that was something he could not allow. Perhaps that's why he chose Bellatrix, a pure-blood witch from the prestigious Black family, to carry his heir. And so, in secret, Delphi was born. But what made her so dangerous? Delphi's story is told only in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, a controversial addition to the saga, officially recognized as canon by J.K. Rowling herself. According to the play, Delphi was born in Malfoy Manor just before the Battle of Hogwarts. After Voldemort's downfall, she was hidden away, raised by a woman who cared for her only in exchange for gold. She grew up alone, abandoned, and full of questions. That changed when her mother's husband, Rodolphus Lestrange, escaped from Azkaban. He revealed the truth: she was the daughter of the greatest dark wizard of all time, and her destiny was to bring him back. Delphi's plan was as brilliant as it was terrifying. She manipulated Amos Diggory, Cedric's grieving father, using his pain to gain access to Harry Potter's son, Albus. Through lies and deception, she convinced him and his best friend, Scorpius Malfoy, to steal a time turner. The goal: to rewrite history and prevent Voldemort's death. Her mission led to a chaotic spiral of alternate realities, near successes, and shocking twists. She fought fiercely, demonstrating abilities beyond ordinary magic. She could speak Parseltongue, fly without a broom, and duel multiple opponents at once. She was powerful enough to defeat Harry Potter himself in combat, but even she was not unstoppable. In the end, it took the combined strength of Harry, Albus, Ron, Hermione, and Draco to bring her down. And even then, it was no easy battle. Delphi was ultimately imprisoned in Azkaban, her dreams of reviving Voldemort crushed forever.
As Delphi sat in her cell in Azkaban, staring at the cold stone walls, she knew one thing for certain: this was not the end. She was the daughter of the Dark Lord. His blood ran through her veins, his will lived within her, and no prison could change that.
The defeat at the hands of Harry Potter and his allies was a setback, but not the final chapter of her story. She had been reckless, too impatient, too eager to claim her rightful place. But she had learned from her mistakes, and she had time to think, to plan, to wait for the right moment. The Dementors glided past her cell, their presence suffocating, draining any warmth from the air. She could hear the distant screams of other prisoners, lost in their own memories, reliving their worst moments over and over again. But Delphi did not scream. She did not break. She had been raised in isolation, accustomed to loneliness, strengthened by suffering. Unlike the others, she did not fear Azkaban. She closed her eyes, focusing on the only thing that mattered, her purpose. Voldemort's work was unfinished. The wizarding world had not been purified. The weak still ruled, the blood traitors still thrived, and Harry Potter was still alive. But that would change. It had to. She thought about the time turner, a fragile tool in the wrong hands, but in hers it had nearly rewritten history. Nearly, but not quite. She had underestimated her enemies, trusted fools who were not worthy of her cause. Next time, there would be no mistakes. Next time, she would not rely on others. But first, she needed to get out. Escaping Azkaban was considered impossible. It had been done before. Her own family members had proven that. Bellatrix, her mother, had broken free with the help of the Dark Lord. Sirius Black had escaped on his own, defying every expectation. If they could do it, so could she. She listened to the rhythmic sound of the waves crashing against the prison walls. The sea was an impenetrable barrier to most, but Delphi was not like most. She had inherited abilities from her father that others could only dream of. She could fly without a broom, just as he had. If she could get past the bars, the walls, the watchful eyes of the guards, the sky would be her escape route. But she needed a plan. She spent her days watching, waiting, listening. The guards were not all as disciplined as they liked to pretend. Some were careless, others greedy. She saw patterns in their movements, noted their routines, their weaknesses. She heard whispers of changes in the ministry, of political tension in the wizarding world. Chaos was brewing again. It always did. And then one night, an opportunity presented itself. A storm raged outside, lightning flashing across the sky, thunder shaking the very foundation of the prison. The guards were distracted, some taking shelter, others struggling to maintain control over restless prisoners. The Dementors were agitated, their movements erratic. Delphi knew this was her moment. She reached deep inside herself, summoning every ounce of power she had. She was not just any witch. She was Voldemort's daughter. And she would not be caged. Muttering under her breath, she traced an invisible rune on the cold stone floor of her cell. Magic, older than the ministry's wards, pulsed through her veins, responding to her call. The air shimmered for a brief moment, and then the chains binding her wrists snapped open. The lock on her cell door clicked, and the heavy iron swung wide. She stepped out into the corridor, moving like a shadow, her footsteps silent. The storm masked the sound of her escape as she weaved through the dimly lit passageways. A lone guard turned a corner, his eyes widening in shock as he spotted her. Before he could raise his wand, Delphi flicked her fingers, sending a silent curse his way. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious before he could make a sound. She took his wand. Power surged through her the moment she gripped it. The feeling was intoxicating, a reminder of what she had lost and what she would soon regain. She whispered a few more incantations, ensuring that the way behind her remained sealed, giving herself enough time to reach the outer walls. The storm was at its peak now. Rain lashed against the stone. The wind howled like a living beast. The sea below churned violently, waves crashing against the jagged rocks. She climbed the outer wall, her fingers gripping the slick stone, her breath steady despite the chaos around her. Lightning split the sky as she reached the top.
And then she jumped.
For a brief moment she was falling, plummeting toward the raging ocean below, but just before she hit the water, her body twisted in the air, her magic taking control. She soared upward, higher and higher, the wind whipping through her hair, the storm raging around her. But she was free.
Azkaban was behind her. The world lay ahead.
Now the real work would begin. Delphine knew she couldn't return to the wizarding world immediately. Too many eyes would be watching, too many enemies would be searching for her. She needed to disappear, to rebuild, to gather strength. There were still those who believed in the Dark Lord's vision. Those who had not forgotten his power, his legacy. Hidden within the shadows of the wizarding world, the remnants of the Death Eaters remained, and she would find them. But first, she needed a new identity. She traveled through the countryside, using her stolen wand to alter her appearance, shifting her features just enough to avoid recognition. She took on a new name, blending in among the witches and wizards who lived on the outskirts of society. For months she remained hidden, learning, gathering knowledge, searching for those who could help her reclaim her destiny. She found them in the darkest corners of the wizarding world, rogue wizards, outcasts, those who still whispered the Dark Lord's name with reverence. They listened to her words, saw the fire in her eyes, felt the power in her presence. She was not just another follower, she was his heir.
And they would follow her.
But Delphine knew she could not simply repeat her father's mistakes. She could not march into war unprepared, could not challenge the ministry without a strategy. She needed something more, a weapon, a way to shift the balance of power in her favor. That was when she heard the whispers. There were ancient spells, lost to time, hidden in the ruins of forgotten wizarding civilizations. Spells that could bend reality, twist fate, undo what had been done. She began her search. Her travels took her to places most feared to tread, deep into the forbidden forest, across the ruins of ancient magical strongholds, into the hidden archives of lost wizarding clans. And finally she found it, a text older than Hogwarts itself, buried beneath the remains of a once great wizarding empire. A spell so powerful it had been erased from history, locked away so that no one could ever use it. But Delphi would. She traced the words with her fingers, feeling the magic stir within her. If she succeeded, time itself would bow to her will. And this time she would not fail.